Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow in a world where every one of your desires, every craving, wish, and fleeting impulse is instantly fulfilled. A plate of food appears the moment you feel hungry. Love is reciprocated before you even confess it. The job you've always wanted offers itself to you without an interview. No obstacles, no delay, no struggle. At first, it's euphoric. But days pass, then weeks, and something begins to rot inside you. The sweetness of indulgence curdles into a dull, bitter ache. The meals lose flavor. Affection begins to feel hollow. Achievements become meaningless because they required nothing of you. And slowly, like fog creeping in over a once beautiful valley, a strange, suffocating sensation settles over your life. Boredom, emptiness, a gnawing awareness that something essential is missing. You've gotten everything you wanted, and now you want to scream. What is this paradox? Why is it that the moment we obtain pleasure, it begins to fade? Why does desire, when fulfilled, give rise not to peace, but to restlessness? This is not just a philosophical riddle. It's the silent suffering curled beneath modern life. We chase what we think will complete us: status, comfort, beauty, success, only to find that the prize is laced with discontent. A gnawing hunger re-emerges and we begin the chase again. New job, new partner, new lifestyle, new purpose. Yet behind all the movement, the inner landscape remains unchanged. We are not growing closer to contentment. We are running in circles, addicted not to having, but to wanting. Arthur Schopenhauer saw this long before consumer culture made it obvious. He wrote that life swings like a pendulum between pain and boredom. When we do not have what we want, we suffer. When we finally obtain it, we are consumed by the emptiness it leaves behind. It is not merely that happiness is fleeting, it is that the very structure of desire guarantees suffering. How do you break free from a cycle that is built into the very engine of your mind? You've been taught that happiness lies in fulfillment, that if you work hard, manifest correctly, or become your best self, you will arrive at some final, satisfying destination. But what if that's a lie? What if fulfillment, as we conceive of it, is a mirage on the horizon, always vanishing when we get close? What if the very act of wanting contains the seed of misery? And what if freedom doesn't come from getting more, but from wanting less? These questions are not comfortable. They are not meant to be. They dismantle the very architecture of your modern mind. And they point to something older, darker, and deeper than self-help mantras or motivational slogans can touch. Because underneath all your goals, beneath every ambition and longing, there is one unspoken hope. That one day this gnawing absence you feel will finally disappear. That one day life will no longer feel like something you're trying to catch up to. That one day you'll just arrive, but you never do, and you know it. So you distract yourself, scroll, consume, compete, perform. You pretend to be moving forward, but existentially you are stuck. Stuck in what Schopenhauer called the will to live, a blind, insatiable force that animates all beings, not toward peace, but toward constant striving. You are not miserable because you have failed. You are miserable because you are alive within a system of endless becoming. You were born into a cage built not of bars, but of desire. And yet, there is a way out. But it is not what you think. It is not success, enlightenment, or pleasure. It is not a better life, but a different relationship to life itself. And once you see it, truly see it, there is no going back. But before we can arrive at the cure, we must descend into the illness. We must dissect the root of the disease so few even know they carry. A disease passed down not through genes, but through language, culture, and unconscious imitation. A psychic virus that hides behind your every decision, wearing the mask of motivation. Are you ready to see what you've spent your whole life avoiding? Good. Then follow the thread. Because this isn't just about philosophy, it's about you and the unseen forces that shape the pain you've mistaken for life. You were born into a storm of needs, taught from infancy to reach, to grab, to want. First a bottle, then a toy, then approval. And slowly, without noticing, your soul became conditioned to equate existence with yearning. By the time you could form a thought, the programming was already complete. If I get this, then I'll be okay. If I become that, then I'll be enough. If they love me, then I'll finally feel real. But what if the premise is flawed? What if the problem isn't that you're not enough, but that you're trapped in a mind that never lets you be? Schopenhauer saw it clearly. To him, the human being is not some noble, rational creature destined for greatness. We are puppets of a deeper force, the will. Not willpower in the modern sense, but a dark, blind, and ceaseless force at the core of all life. A drive without direction, an appetite without end. You don't have the will, you are the will, disguised in flesh, fooled into thinking you're in control. Schopenhauer's will isn't personal. It doesn't care about your dreams or values. It doesn't want happiness. It just wants more. More survival, more stimulation, more becoming. It is the root of all striving, all desire, all suffering. Because to want is to lack, and to lack is to suffer. Now pause. Think about the last time you truly wanted something badly. A person, a job, a future. Recall the grip it had on you, the way your thoughts bent around it, how everything else faded, waiting for that one need to be fulfilled. And then, it either slipped away or you got it and the thrill dissolved, replaced not by peace but by a new craving. This is the trap, and it is ancient. Across cultures and time, wise minds have tried to expose this pattern. Buddhism called it tanha, thirst, a craving that leads to dukkha, suffering. Viktor Frankl, in his logotherapy, spoke of the existential vacuum, the emptiness that arises when meaning is replaced by impulse. Carl Jung warned of the shadow, the parts of us that manipulate from the depths, unseen, sabotaging every victory. And Jean-Paul Sartre declared that man is a useless passion, forever condemned to reach for a being he can never become. Why? Because desire has no final object. It's a shapeshifter. It promises resolution, but only breeds further need. You win today's battle, and tomorrow the hunger returns. Not because life is unfair, but because the system itself, the structure of desire, is broken. This is the wound behind the wound, the one you can't medicate or fix with self-improvement. Because it is the self, the Western world, fueled by capitalism and consumerism, thrives on this wound. It depends on you never feeling enough. Advertisers don't sell you products, they sell you illusions of completion. And every image whispers the same message. You are not whole, but you could be if you just had this. Meanwhile, our educational systems teach us to become something, never to be. And so we climb invisible ladders, mistaking movement for meaning. Degrees, promotions, milestones, symbols of progress that hide the fact that we are spiritually running in place. Even love is infected. We don't just want connection, we want someone to save us from ourselves, to validate our worth, to distract us from the ever-present hum of lack. But people cannot fill a void created by being alive. And so relationships become mirrors of our unmet needs, collapsing under the weight of expectations no human can satisfy. Aldous Huxley saw it. Most human beings have an almost infinite capacity for taking things for granted, including each other, including life. So what happens when a species is driven by a will it cannot satisfy? When pain becomes the default and boredom the reward of achievement, it fragments, internally and collectively. Look around. You'll see what Schopenhauer predicted, a world of restless souls swinging between anxiety and numbness, suicide rates rising, loneliness becoming epidemic, depression no longer a disorder but a rational response to a system that demands perpetual motion and gives no rest. And in response, we medicate, escape, perform, pretend. We build entire industries around distracting ourselves from the truth. This isn't working. The most terrifying realization isn't that we're suffering, it's that we're suffering by design, not by accident, not because you haven't found the right path yet, but because the entire path is paved by the will, by lack, by desire, by a ceaseless reaching that can never, ever be fulfilled. And so the deeper question is not, how do I get what I want, but rather, who or what is doing the wanting, and can that be undone? Schopenhauer believed there was only one cure, but it is not pleasant, it is not empowering, it is not sexy, it is brutal. It requires you to see through the illusion you call a self, the one built entirely from wanting. To glimpse the hollow engine behind your personality, to confront the possibility that your suffering does not come from the world, but from the very structure of your consciousness. a consciousness hijacked by the will. But don't despair. This confrontation is not the end, it's the beginning. Because the moment you realize the trap is internal, you stop trying to escape outwardly. You stop chasing. You start watching. You begin to disentangle your being from your impulses. And for the first time, something else, something quieter, emerges. But we're not there yet. First, you need to see what this trap does to a life, how it corrupts not just your desires, but your sense of self, your relationships, your reality. Because if you don't see the full cost of this disease, you'll never be willing to kill it. And it must die. Up next, the hidden consequences you never realized were shaping everything you are. You live a life that feels real. You feel joy, fear, ambition, shame. Make choices. You fall in love. You suffer heartbreak. You strive. You regret. You age. But what if none of it is what it seems? What if your life is less the story of you and more the echo of a silent force pulling strings behind the scenes? What if your choices aren't really yours, but pre-selected by a drive that cares only for its own continuation? This is the devastating insight buried beneath Schopenhauer's philosophy. You are not the author of your desires. You are the puppet of them. You believe you want a career that makes you proud. But what if pride itself is just a mask, an evolutionary lure, to make you productive, admired, and ultimately useful to a system that feeds on striving? You believe you want love. But what if what you call love is a coded hunger for validation, comfort, and existential security? You believe you're following your dreams. But what if your dreams were planted in you by others, by a culture that needs you to keep reaching so the machine never stops turning? These are not paranoid thoughts. They are liberating recognitions. But before liberation, they will burn. Because to accept them means facing something terrifying. You may have never actually lived. You may have only ever reacted to lack, to desire, to fear. Let that land. You were born with a nervous system hardwired to notice absence more than presence. Evolution did not optimize you for happiness. It optimized you for survival. And survival is inherently anxious. It demands vigilance, alertness, movement, wanting. Neurologically, the human brain registers pain and potential threat far more intensely than it registers contentment. This is called the negativity bias. It means your mind is like Velcro for suffering and Teflon for peace. Now combine that with the will, an existential engine of endless lack. And what do you get? A self that is addicted to suffering, not consciously, not masochistically, but structurally. This is why boredom feels unbearable. It's not just emptiness, it's the absence of distraction from the horror of inner silence. The moment you stop chasing, you're left alone with the truth. There's nothing inherently satisfying about being alive when being alive is defined by constant hunger. And so we construct illusions to survive. We romanticize the future. Once I get there, I'll feel better. We glorify the past. Things used to be simpler, happier, more real. And we curate the present, Instagram filters on our anxiety, Spotify playlists for our sadness, motivational quotes over the abyss, anything to avoid being. But all of it, the nostalgia, the ambition, the distractions, is noise, white noise covering the scream underneath. Because somewhere deep down, no matter what you gain, it won't be enough. No matter who loves you, it won't quiet the hunger. No matter what you achieve, it won't touch the hollow inside. This is not depression, this is awareness. Albert Camus wrote, "There is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide." He wasn't romanticizing despair. He was naming the brutal honesty required to confront life without illusions, to stop pretending that meaning will arrive later, to stare directly into the absurdity of existence and ask, now that I see it, how do I live? Most people don't ask that. They can't. The consequences are too heavy. So they stay in motion. They perform normalcy. They hide behind personality, identity, routine. But the consequences of avoidance are everywhere. You see them in the businessman who sacrifices every moment of presence in the name of future wealth, only to discover that when he finally stops, there's no one inside to enjoy it. You see it in the lover who clings obsessively, not to the person, but to the illusion that this time, finally, they will be saved from themselves. You see it in the influencer, curating a flawless image while privately drowning in panic attacks and existential nausea. You see it in yourself, in that quiet despair that creeps in during the silence between distractions, in the restless need to improve, upgrade, optimize, in the inability to sit in a room alone without needing something, anything, to numb the weight of being. The will has colonized your inner world, and culture has built a kingdom around it. And yet, no one talks about it, because to name it is to unravel everything. The moment you see that your very sense of self is constructed by lack, you cannot unsee it. Your desires are not holy. They are not you. They are the hands of the will reaching through your consciousness like a parasite in a host. That's the horror. You are not suffering. Suffering is what is playing through you. Schopenhauer believed that in rare moments, through art, music, compassion, and especially deep introspection, we catch glimpses of freedom from the will. Not freedom to chase a better life, but freedom from chasing altogether. But these glimpses are fleeting because the will always returns, subtly, seductively, whispering, "Don't you want just a little more?" And if you're not vigilant, you say yes, again and again and again, until your entire life has passed, unlived, because what you called living was just reacting to lack, chasing shadows, trying to patch a hole that exists not in the world but in you. So the real question becomes, can you stop? Not for a day, not for a retreat or a weekend of mindfulness. Can you step outside the structure of desire itself? Can you bear to live without needing? Because only then, in that radical absence, does something else emerge. Not pleasure, not happiness, something quieter, older, undisturbed. But before we get there, before the cure, there is one final descent. You must understand the rebellion, the way out, the path of those few who broke free, not by having more, but by wanting less. It is not comfortable, it is not clean, but it is real. And it begins with a refusal to be used by the will. It starts as a flicker, a moment where the engine stalls, where you stop reaching, if only for a heartbeat, and the whole machinery of your being seems to hold its breath. No desire, no chase, just stillness, then terror. Because without craving, who are you? Without the story of becoming, of one day being complete, what's left? Just this moment, just this breath, just this strange, formless presence. This is where most turn back. Because we have been conditioned to believe that the absence of wanting is death, that stillness is stagnation, that peace is weakness, that to not desire is to decay. But this is the lie, and rebellion begins when you see through it, not by force, not by willpower, but by renunciation, a word that has been polluted, often mistaken for asceticism, for denial, for suffering for its own sake. But true renunciation is different. It is the sacred no, the no that whispers, "I will no longer be used by my impulses. I will no longer define my life by hunger. I will no longer serve the will." This is not repression. It is clarity, a clearing away, a refusal to feed the ghost that has haunted you your whole life. And in that clearing, something begins. Let's go deeper. To Schopenhauer, the human being has three paths. 1, to be enslaved by the will. 2, to anesthetize the will through distraction. 3, to transcend the will through conscious negation. The first is most common, life as ceaseless desire. The second is the modern default, life as performance, dopamine, sedation. But the third, that is the path of the rebel, the mystic, the monk, the artist who creates not to impress, but to momentarily silence the inner storm. It's not about renouncing the world. It's about seeing through the illusion that the world owes you something it cannot give. Pleasure is fleeting. Success is hollow. Validation is borrowed. Even love, beautiful as it is, cannot be clung to without distorting it. And so the rebellion begins when you look directly at your deepest desires and whisper, "I see you. I know what you are, and I will not follow you anymore." It is painful. It will feel like death, because in a way it is. You are killing the false self, the self constructed by craving, the self that says, "I am not enough, but maybe one day I will be." This is the great shift from becoming to being. But being is not passive. It is the most courageous act. Because when you stop chasing, you must face what remains. The raw, unfiltered now, the silence beneath your thoughts, the space between distractions. And in that space, something ancient stirs. Schopenhauer, though famously pessimistic, hinted at a secret door. In moments of aesthetic experience, listening to music, contemplating nature, witnessing great art, the will is momentarily silenced. Not because you've fulfilled desire, but because you've transcended it. You are no longer the one who wants, you are the one who watches. This state is called the will-less state, a moment where the self dissolves into pure perception, where the division between subject and object disappears, where you are not the person looking at the painting, you are the act of seeing. In those rare moments, suffering stops, not because the world changes, but because the structure of perception changes. You're no longer a hungry ghost, you are awareness itself. This is the deepest rebellion, to stop identifying with your hunger. And then, paradoxically, you begin to act from a place of stillness, not need. You still work, you still speak, you still love, but not from a void, not from a need to be completed. You are no longer trying to get, you are simply being. And when you act from being, your actions become pure. They are not manipulations. They are not bargaining chips with fate. They are not secret contracts that say, if I do this, will you love me now? They are untainted, weightless, sacred. This is what spiritual traditions have called non-attachment, what the Taoists called wu-wei, effortless action, what Zen calls suchness, this just as it is. It is a way of living where nothing is added to reality, where the moment is not a stepping stone but the destination, and it's terrifying, because we're not used to peace, we're addicted to struggle, to drama, to what's next. But if you endure the stillness long enough, you'll find something shocking. Peace isn't empty, it's full. Not of stimulation, but of presence, of clarity, of subtle joy that asks for nothing. And here's the miracle. When you no longer need others to complete you, you can finally love them. When you no longer chase purpose, you begin to live with intention. When you no longer fear the void, you become intimate with reality. This is not about perfection. You will still forget, still ache, still fall back into old patterns. But now you will know. You will know the difference between real and false. You will know when the will is whispering in your ear again, and you'll smile, not with resistance, but with freedom. Because now you have a choice, and that's everything. This is the rebellion, not loud, not violent, but profound. It is a quiet revolution of perception, a shift from hunger to stillness, from lack to being. But one final question remains. If you are not your hunger, if you are not your story, if you are not your striving, then who or what are you really? That at last is the final descent. The deepest truth, the last door, and it is time to open it. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a vast, infinite sea. The wind has stopped, the tide is still. For the first time, there is no noise, no voices, no ambition, no memory, just you and the silence. And in that silence, a question rises, not from your mind, but from some hidden place below thought. If I am not my desires, not my past, not even my name, then what am I? For centuries, mystics, monks, philosophers, and wanderers have chased this final answer. They crossed deserts, sat in caves, fasted, meditated, renounced everything, and still most came back only with metaphors. I am the witness. I am the nothing that contains everything. I am the silence before the word. Schopenhauer, stripped of mysticism, offered something colder, but perhaps more honest. He did not promise salvation. He did not promise meaning. He promised clarity. And sometimes clarity is all you need to be free. Here is the truth Schopenhauer came to after staring directly into the heart of human suffering. You are the eye of the storm. You are not the storm itself, not the chaos, not the desires, the thoughts, the fears. Those swirl around you endlessly, but you are not them. You are the space in which they happen. And this space, when stripped of everything, does not lack anything. It is not a vacuum to be filled. It is freedom itself. Think of it this way. All your life, you've mistaken the shadows for yourself. The flickering images of pleasure, status, validation. You chased them as if they were you. But they were just weather, passing conditions on the screen of your awareness. You are the screen, and nothing that appears on the screen can stain it. This is the revelation that Buddhist thought echoes, and which Schopenhauer admired deeply. Beneath the ceaseless activity of the will, beneath even consciousness, there is a silent witness that needs nothing to be complete. It's not personal. It's not heroic. It doesn't care if you're successful, liked, or even alive in the conventional sense. It simply is. And this is where things get terrifying or liberating, depending on whether you're still clinging to identity. Because once you realize you are not the striving, not the story, not even the thinker of your thoughts, a strange thing happens. Suffering loses its grip, not because it disappears, but because it no longer defines you. Pain arises, thoughts arise, fear arises, but you are not inside of them. They are inside of you, just like a dream you no longer believe is real. This is the final cure, not pleasure, not purpose, not even peace in the conventional sense, but detachment from the illusion that anything can complete you. Schopenhauer called it the quieting of the will, not through violence, not through force, but through deep, lucid seeing. When you realize that everything you craved was just the will trying to perpetuate itself, when you truly see this, it loses its magic. The spell breaks. What remains is not absence. It is presence, not nothingness, but a fullness without grasping. You no longer live for anything. You simply live. This state is so alien to modern man that we recoil from it. Our entire civilization is built on the sacredness of goals, growth, progress. But what if the highest form of existence is not becoming more, but being less? Less entangled, less reactive, less possessed. The great mystics said, "Die before you die, and you shall never die." Schopenhauer, less poetic, but just as deep, meant the same. Let the will die within you, and you will be free. Not because you conquered suffering, but because you saw through it. Like a mirage in the desert, it doesn't need to be destroyed. You only need to realize it was never real. But here, where things get even stranger, when you no longer need the world to complete you, when you no longer chase success or admiration or even happiness, you become dangerous, because you are finally free, not free to do whatever you want, but free from the compulsion to do anything at all. From this freedom, paradoxically, comes real compassion, real creativity, real joy. Why? Because you're no longer trying to extract anything from life. You're not taking, you're being. And that being ripples outward. You listen differently, you move differently, you exist without distortion. You can walk into a room and no longer need to perform. You can look at a sunset and no longer think of Instagram. You can hold someone and not fear they'll leave. Because even if they do, it doesn't touch the core of you. This is not indifference, it's invincibility. And it is the gift hidden at the heart of Schopenhauer's grim philosophy, not because he offered hope, but because he showed the hollowness of hope, and in that hollowness, truth shined through. So now you stand at the edge of that sea again, still, silent, watching. You feel the pull, the will, whispering of better futures, deeper love, higher peaks. But this time you smile, you don't follow. You let it pass like wind through an open window. And in its absence, you do something radical. You remain. You stay with yourself, not the self that wants, but the one that is. And for the first time, perhaps in your whole life, you are not becoming, you are not running, you are home.